Making personal finance simpler with Gabriel Nussbaum. This is That Money Show.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to That Money Show. Thank you for sticking around. And as promised, I am going to be joined now by Amy Knight, NerdWallet's UK's personal finance expert, to talk about quite an interesting topic. Now, we thought we were out of the cost of living crisis. We thought that maybe we were saying bye-bye to that in 2024. Finally, we're going to move into a fresh start, 2025, and things are going to slowly start, not to get cheaper, but maybe not to get as expensive just as fast. Well, like I said, I'm joined by Amy now to potentially share some not so fun news about why we might be going into, not as bad, but into a slightly smaller cost of living crisis yet again. Amy, welcome back to That Money Show. Happy 2025, I think. Yeah, it's only the 6th today. I can still say that, right? Happy New Year.
Absolutely. Happy New Year.
So, I mean, I'm sorry to everyone for kind of breaking this news and kind of talking about prices going up again, yet again. But what's happening? Why are we still talking about this?
Prices are going up, you're right, and some of the increases have hit us already, although people may not have noticed yet. So from the 1st of January, the energy price cap went up, adding £21 to the average annual bill. Bus fares went up on the 1st of January, and then we've got increases in rail fares, water bills, council tax and stamp duty, all to look forward to in the first part of this year.
So are these normal changes? Are these things that happen every single year anyway because of inflation? Or are these kind of things that aren't expected and are genuinely adding to another cost of living crisis?
Most of them are to be expected. The stamp duty one is a bit of a shocker. That's going to unfortunately impact a lot of first-time buyers and make it much harder to get onto the property ladder. But in terms of energy bills and general price increases, certainly things like groceries, inflation is, as you say, the driving force behind that. Inflation's at 2.6% at the moment. We're going to find out next week whether it went up or down in terms of the rate that prices changed in November. And some parts of the economy are growing at a faster rate and prices are having to keep up, unfortunately.
And we're not just done in January, because come April this year, we're expecting another hike because of the impact of things happening to businesses. Are you happy to kind of share what our Chancellor announced and the changes taking place in April that will start to implement another wave of price increases if they, again, haven't already happened?
Absolutely. We spoke about this just before Christmas, didn't we? Because this was one of the top financial stories of 2024, that in the Chancellor's budget, she announced that employers would have to pay more in national insurance contributions, and the minimum wage is going up, which is great news for workers. But both of those factors combined put small businesses under so much financial pressure. A lot of them are going to be forced to put their prices up, costing us more.
Exactly. So to kind of summarise, we won't go into the specific changes again, because you can listen to, like Amy said, our last show where we said it was one of the highlights of 2024, not one of our favourite parts of 2024, quite the opposite. We don't like prices of things going up at all, but it's definitely one of the biggest financial impact moments of the year, was the fact that things are getting more expensive for businesses. Labour kind of went after businesses in terms of trying to increase how much money they bring in through taxes and other vehicles, etc., etc. But what they don't kind of advertise is that businesses don't absorb these costs. They pass them on to employees, and also, of course, onto consumers. With most studies saying that over the next few years, about 80% of these costs are going to be passed on to us, the people, the workers, and the people buying the stuff from them. And April is the point where a lot of these changes are actually taking place. Minimum wage is going to go up. National insurance changes are actually going to start happening as well. And so that might be the point where companies start to flick the switch on some products. Potentially some will go kind of like a cliff edge and say all of a sudden now X is 5-10% more expensive because of what's happening to us. And some might start to ease us into it a little bit. But regardless of which way round their tactics are, prices are on the up yet again, which is, yeah, great. Good fun for us. So what are the main things that people should, I suppose, be aware of right now? You know, this is the point where people are refreshing their budgets, hopefully taking a look at their finances, trying to clean things up. And it kind of sounds like they're being punched in the face before they've even had a chance to put up their fists and defend themselves. So how can people prepare at this time of year?
Yeah, absolutely. I can appreciate the punch in the stomach analogy, but I would suggest to think of how you take your vitamins at this time of year and you're trying to give your body a fighting chance against all these disgusting viruses going around. So there are things you can do to give your finances a fighting chance. You can boost your financial health and your financial resilience. And the budget is the starting point for that. You need to audit what you've been spending and get really clear on what's a need and what's is a want. So you look at your outgoings, where could you reduce them now to give you a little bit more breathing room? And then where could you cut your spending down further if you were to have a massive increase in your bills? Where could you find that extra money? So for example, if your water bill goes up, if your council tax goes up, what could you live without? Is it the takeaways? Is it Disney Plus? Just to try and ease that financial strain. The next piece of advice would be to build a buffer for bigger bills. So if you've got a little bit of cash spare at the moment, tuck it away in a savings account. Ideally, you want that somewhere that's earning a higher interest rate than the inflation rate, then you're growing your money. And then if you are unexpectedly hit with a massive direct debit because your provider's increased the monthly payment, you've got that little pocket of money so that you're not having to go into debt to cover that bill. You can economise on your food shop. So you could downshift, or it's sometimes called trading down. If you're used to shopping at a particular supermarket, try the budget supermarket, see if you can get all of your basics for less, and then you can just go to your favourite supermarket for the odd treat, and that should trim quite a bit off your grocery bill each month.
I love all of that. I want to kind of dive into each of these categories now with you, because that's brilliant general money saving advice. But let's kind of dive into each of these price increases and try and give, the listener one or two things that they can be aware of, as well as what's actually happening. So let's start with the energy price. I think there was an announcement pretty recently that the price increase, is it in 2 or 3 months from now, around April, is going up a little bit more than expected, an extra £20 or £25 compared to their original estimations. So with utility prices in particular, how can people save money in that category?
So I like to think of the January transfer window at this point.
I like it. Not very active for my football team.
With your energy provider. And find somebody that can give you a cheaper deal. If you've been shopping around using comparison sites, looking at where you could get a fixed rate deal for less per month, that's a nice way of locking in your costs, makes it easier to budget. But you can also take back a little bit of control if you're able to make your home more efficient and reduce the amount of energy that you're wasting. Switching things off at the socket, every little bit helps.
All right, I like it. 2 good tips, including a January transfer window. Remember, these companies are not loyal to you, so don't be loyal to them. It's like the bank switching idea where someone's like, well, I'm with a bank provider because I've always been with them. Well, why? Actually reevaluate it. They don't really care about you, so do you care about them? Okay, that's utilities, in particular energy prices. Food, you did give a little bit of a hint with food and groceries about down kind of grading your shopping experience. But what other things can people look to do imagine if they're already at the budget stop that they shop at? There isn't anything cheaper than the one they're currently at. Are there any other tactics that people can implement to save on groceries, which is another huge monthly bill for people?
Cutting down waste is really, really important, because if you've got no money to spare, the absolute last thing you want to be doing is throwing food in the bin. So being really organised to plan your meals, write down the ingredients you need, and freezing your leftovers. You can also work out what times of the week and what times of the day different shops are marking down their prices. Go and sweep up the things you're going to need and stick them in the freezer if you can.
I like it. And my one is, even though people are probably very against this, you do have to sign up to the loyalty schemes. It's unfortunate. They want your data, they get your data. But I just don't see a world where you can go into, for example, Tesco and not pay their club card prices, because they are so much cheaper than the normal prices. I'm not saying they're cheap. I'm saying that the normal prices are just so expensive and the club card prices are just normal. They are what you need to be paying with. So, I mean, if you like to have 1,000 cards in your wallet, go down that route. But you can get the apps. You can just screenshot all of your little QR codes or whatever you need to scan at checkout and just have all of them on your phone, which you know you're going to be taking to the shop every single time. I have all of them saved and I'm ready to go with 3 or 4 different shops in my area. So I will never, ever, ever not scan that the club card price or whatever it is for the relevant supermarket. You mentioned stamp duty in particular for first-time buyers, but it's for all buyers whatsoever. So what's going on there, and what can people do if they want to buy a house?
Stamp duty, that change is going to come into effect on the 1st of April. So there are a lot of people scrabbling to try and get a transaction through before the end of March. And some people will be able to, and some people unfortunately won't. So if you're in that category of trying to move and hoping that your sale's going to go through before the threshold changes, I would suggest if you can save money for the worst case scenario, a lot of moves don't happen on the timeline that people want them to. So have that contingency where you've got the money if you needed to pay a few extra £1,000 stamp duty, and then hopefully you won't have to. But what's going to happen is the nil rate threshold, it has been at 250,000 and it's going down to £125,000. So properties will be subject to stamp duty over that amount. And then the first time buyer threshold is a bit more generous, but that's also moving down. It will change from £425,000 down to 300. Given that the average house price in England is already at £308,000, most first-time buyers are going to end up paying some stamp duty, particularly in areas like London and the southeast where property prices are much higher.
Yeah, so I think the kind of tip here is if you are in the process, maybe your solicitors are talking to each other, you're getting through everything, I would lean on them a little bit more than you maybe currently are right now, because as of April, stamp duty is going up. And there is, imagine, let's say you complete on your property 5 days after that stamp duty change. You'll be kicking yourself because that is thousands of extra pounds that you will have to pay needlessly if you can just lean on them and get things done a little bit quicker on the right side of April being, March, not in this case May, even though some people say the right side of April is May because it's just, a little bit warmer. But we're talking about house prices here, people, not weather. Stop distracting me. I know it's cold outside. It's just a thing. So yeah, get a move on. If you are someone, however, I think that's in the kind of property hunt period right now, I wouldn't rush a property purchase, like going out and just agreeing and finding one and putting an offer on that maybe you weren't completely happy with just because of the stamp duty change. Please make sure that you would have made that purchase regardless of what's going on with stamp duty, because this is quite literally going to be the biggest purchase of your life. And yes, a few £1,000s does make a big difference, but in the actual relative, like we said, the average house price being around £300,000 right now, that's much more concerning, and you don't want to kind of end up in a property that you're not happy with just because you rushed it because of stamp duty. But you've got still 4 months, plenty of time to buy a property. I mean, probably not. I don't know why I said that. It's not that long to buy a property, but that's just something to be aware of. So kind of looking forward towards the future, we've said there's going to be another little rise now, another potential rise in terms of cost of living in April. Are we getting to the peak of this word, cost of living? What's happening in the future? What does 2025 have in store if you had your crystal ball in front of you when it came to prices going up? Or are we kind of getting towards the peak when things calm down finally this year?
I think if there's a phrase that's been used even more than cost of living crisis, it's new normal. We've been saying that, haven't we, since we came out of COVID?
I think I just had a shiver go down my spine.
Higher prices look to be the new normal. So adjusting your expectations and budgeting and living within your means. And then if things really calm down on the inflation front, we have briefly got below 2% at the end of last year. It's jumped back up again, but broadly speaking, it's hovering roughly where the Bank of England want it, and we're still expecting interest rate cuts, maybe only 2 or 3 this year, but that should ease a little bit of pressure, so it's not all bad news.
Okay, I feel like new normal originally scared me, but I think it's it's one of those things like ripping the Band-Aid off. It's just if you can admit that to yourself, that this is the price of what things are, and you're not kind of living just to hope things get better in the future, and you can just accept it and customize your budget, your saving, your spending to what's happening right now. Hopefully that way, like you said, things will feel a little bit more comfortable this year. Well, Amy, thank you for joining me on the first show of 2025. I'm sure there's going to be plenty more. And I think I can say it again, Happy New Year.
Thanks very much. Have a good one.
Thank you. Well, there you go. Things are going up in price, but Amy left us with a little bit of happiness at the end of it.